Y the Last Man, Volume 10, Whys and Wherefores. Written by Brian K. Vaughan and art by Pia Guerra. Alright, Y the Last Man, Volume 10, the final volume. Before I dive into the story, I want to announce my next project, and that project will be not much of a surprise for a lot of people because I've talked about covering this book for over a year now. So my next book I will be covering is Preacher by Garth Ennis. For those of you that have watched my videos covering Garth Ennis's other series, The Boys, well, Preacher is probably Garth Ennis's most popular, most important, most influential book he's ever done. And it is definitely worth covering. So I'm very excited to go through that story. Some of you may have seen the AMC TV adaptation, which has been not bad. I'm having a lot of fun with that series. I thought it was pretty good. There's some things I liked, some things I didn't. But it was a fun series. But really, if you want to experience Preacher, you gotta go through the comics. So I'm very excited to take you all on that adventure. The story is about this preacher named Jesse Custer that gets the power of sort of God imbued in him, and with it he can sort of control people. And God has apparently abandoned heaven, so Jesse goes on a journey to find God, and he tags along with his girlfriend Tulip, as well as this vampire named Cassidy. So it's these sort of weird people going on this adventure across America. Very fun book. So stay tuned for that in the future. All right, Y the Last Man, Volume 10. Man, what an ending to this series. So this last volume is when Y the Last Man finally won a lot of awards. It won the Eisner for Best Continuing Series, which is basically the equivalent of winning the Oscar for Best Picture, except for comic books. And I would say it is worthy of those accolades because this last volume is in many ways a masterpiece. Just so many things are going to hit you so emotionally. And I broke down crying multiple times throughout this volume. And I guarantee 95% of you are going to be crying at some point in this video. So just really leaves a lasting impression, this last volume. All right, enough build-up. Let's dive into the story for Volume 10, Whys and Wherefores, and then when I wrap up the story, I'll have some closing thoughts about how everything ended. Issue 55, Whys and Wherefores, Part 1. 355 and Yorick are traveling stowaways on a train passing through Russia, and Russia appears to be a communist government once again and is called the United Soviet States. Yorick and 355 are trying to make their way to France so Yorick can reunite with Beth. In the train car, 355 and Yorick come across the frozen preserved body of Vladimir Lenin, which the Russian government has been preserving since his death in 1924. 355 theorizes that the Russian government must have decided to move the body, maybe because of all the reactor meltdowns that Natalia warned them about. Some Russian guards barge into the train car they are in and they have guns, and they begin to question 355 and Yorick. 355 begins speaking Russian to them to try and smooth things over. One of the guards pulls out Yorick's lighter that he has on him, and the lighter says, "Fuck communism" on it. Yorick says, "Oh, it's from a comic book." Yorick, he is referring to Preacher, where Jesse Custer also has a "Fuck communism" lighter. Yorick, he must have bought the same thing at a novelty shop because he's a fan of Preacher. The Russian guards take offense though and say, "You see this? They're rebels! Kill them!" 355 sighs, and now she has to go into ass-kicking mode. She punches and knocks some of these Russians out, and Yorick, he actually gets into the fight as well and throws a punch, knocking one of the other women out. Yorick and 355 make their way to the last train car, and 355 blows the latch, separating them from the rest of the train. As they have now sort of gotten away, 355 compliments Yorick on his nice punching back there. She says, "You finally learned to stop hitting like a girl." And Yorick says, "Yeah, well, I had a very manly instructor." We jump to Paris. We see baby Vlad is crying, and Hero is frustrated with all the noise and the fact that none of them have really made much progress on finding Yorick, and that Arthur and the Israelis are still after them. We see that Hero, Beth from Cooksfield, Seba, Natalia, Vlad, and Beth Jr. are all still holed up together. Now Hero's angry with them because of her frustration, but she soon apologizes once she realizes that she is frustrated with her own shortcomings in life, and the rest of the girls forgive her and comfort her. We see that Yorick 355 have made their way onto another train car, and they are continuing their journey towards France. Yorick opens the train car door and sees that 355 is in a dominatrix outfit with her tits out. Yorick apologizes for walking in, and 355 tells him to close the door. This is nothing you've never seen before, right? 355 tells him that he's making a mistake, and Yorick asks, "What do you mean?" And 355 then turns into a decaying bat and tells Yorick that you're going to die if you come for me. So it's revealed that this is actually a dream, and in the dream, Yorick is being warned off coming to Beth in France. Yorick, he then wakes up from his weird bad dream. Him and 355 are in fact in a train car, and they're heading through Germany now, although it's not as nice a train car as the one in his dream. But Yorick asks 355 if she thinks he's going bald. 355 answers, "I don't know, I guess it's thinned a bit since I first met you." And then Yorick to this replies, "Aw shit, I knew it. I'm barely 27. My dad had a full head of hair his entire life." 355, trying to comfort him, says, "Genetics, it's a crapshoot. I mean, you're the sole survivor of an apocalyptic plague, but your hairline is receding. Win some, lose some." Yorick, frustrated with his receding hairline and the fact that he might lose all of his hair one day, says, "Screw it, I'll just shave my head." And 355 tells him, "Yeah, don't do that. White boys look like shit bald." 355 asks him, "What is this all about, Yorick?" Yorick admits that he is concerned that Beth might not be attracted to him anymore. I mean, it's been 5 years since they last saw each other. 355 replies, "Hey, it's not like there are any other fish in the sea for her. But will you calm down? You're a decent guy. That was a rarity before the plague hit. Besides, how do you know you're still going to be attracted to her? I mean, I've gotten fat as a house since the boys died." Yorick tells her, "Oh, shut up. You're totally hotter now than when I first got saddled with you. You were all butch and scary back then. You're way more, I don't know, womanly these days." 355 then motions for Yorick to begin sparring with her. She wants to teach Yorick how to protect himself for when she is no longer around when they separate ways. Yorick tells 355 that she should hang out with him and Beth for a while once they all meet up. "I bet the two of you would love each other." 355 says, "Thanks, but it's time for me to move on." As they are having this conversation, they are grappling and practicing sparring. Yorick is throwing blows, and 355 is teaching him various moves. Yorick tells 355, well, when this is over, she should take some time for herself at least. He tells her, I mean, get out there and enjoy the world. You haven't even seen a movie or bought a CD since you were like, what, 12? You've spent most of your life just thinking about the dudes you've been protecting. They continue to talk a little bit more and ride the train. We jump to Alter Leon and her Israeli troops. They have arrived in France and are searching for Yorick as well as his friends. Alter and her crew see a newly burned down synagogue, and Alter tries to rile up her women about this hate crime that was committed against Jews. She says, if any of you still question why we're spending time and resources searching for this last boy, you just dirty your hands in those ashes of that synagogue. The world is still aching to finish what the Nazis started, and securing a living male before our enemies is the only leverage we have to ensure our nation's continued survival. One of Alter's soldiers says that she thinks she's found the girl that Yorick is searching for. She's referring to Beth DeVille, the Beth from Australia. Well, she was passing around photos of her and Yorick, and she is looking for him. She shows the photo to Alter, and Alter, seeing the photo, tells her soldiers, collect your things, we're on the march. Issue 56, Whys and Wherefores, Part 2. 355 and Yorick have now arrived in Paris, France. Yorick is staring through a shop window at some chocolate that is on display. It's been years since he's had chocolate. Yorick wants some bad. After some convincing, 355 says, "Alright, let's buy one piece." And then they go into the store. Just as they head into the store, we see Yorick's sister Hero and all the women with her round the corner. They walk through the streets of Paris, and Hero eventually sees a picture that Yorick's Beth DeVille, has hung up on a street post asking if anyone has seen him, although the contact info has been ripped off. Either way, all the women see this as a good sign that they are on the right track. Beth from Cooksfield finally sees a picture of Beth DeVille for the first time, and she comments that, "She's pretty, huh?" Natalia tells Beth, "She's a nice girl, but you are a beautiful woman. Your face has more characteristics." Beth says, "Thanks, Nat, but it's not a competition. I may have been the Jezebel who stole Yorick for an evening, but I'm not going to be the homewrecker who ruins the poor guy's chance at true love." Hero tells her that, "Yorick's the father of your daughter, Beth. It's fine if Yorick's back with Beth DeVille now, but he's going to find a way to make you and Beth Jr. a part of his life, too." Yorick and 355 are looking for a place to sleep for the night. 355 thinks they should lay low, so she picks the lock to some catacombs. They make their way underground to the catacombs, and they discuss all the things that Yorick has taught 355 over their time together. Things like escaping handcuffs, leg irons, straitjackets, etc. 355 asks, "Hey, how about that disappearing act you did back at the Washington Monument? You know, I turned around for a second and you just vanished into thin air. You never told me how you did that." Yorick says, "Yeah, well, you still haven't told me your real name." 355, she still refuses to tell Yorick her real name. Yorick then says, "Okay, well, I choose to believe that your real name is Rhoda McBlowhole." They then walk into an underground room with all these dead skulls because, you know, they are in the catacombs after all. 355 explains that these bodies were long dead before the plague even hit. Everyone used to get buried down here. We jump to Alter and Eliana. Eliana was the one that confronted Alter last volume. Alter has stolen bags of mail from the post office. She is reading through everyone's mail because she believes that she narrowed down the coordinates of Yorick's girlfriend, Beth, to a certain district, and she's confident one of these letters will provide them an exact address. Eliana questions Alter, though, and accuses Alter of burning down that synagogue they saw in last issue and blaming it on the French as a way to motivate her people. Eliana says, "Hey, look, it's one thing to doctor photos to rally the troops, but now you're resorting to hate crimes against your own people?" And Alter says, "Hey, in the pictures I showed you, they weren't doctored. Female platoons from North Korea, Chile, and other countries really are at war in different corners of the globe. They're just squabbling over the same petty things armies always have: land, resources, religious nonsense." Eliana asks, "You told us we had to rescue the last man before another military got their hands on him. But if they don't care about Yorick Brown, why the hell do you?" And Alter says that she is done explaining her strategies. She stabs Eliana in the stomach and tells her, "Tell Sadie I said hello." We jump back to Yorick and 355 in the catacombs. Yorick is writing a reading list for 355 of stuff he thinks that she'll dig. He tells her, "If I ever have to leave you by your lonesome, I want you to at least have some quality literature to keep you company." The two of them talk about Yorick and Beth potentially having kids. Yorick, he's worried about being a good father as he's not the most masculine guy. As the two of them share a jar of peanut butter, Yorick, he shares a story about a kid he went to school with that had a peanut allergy. Yorick says the kid, he always had to sit at this special table. They called it the peanut allergy table, and you couldn't sit there if you had a peanut butter and jam sandwich or whatever. So this kid, he always ended up eating by himself every single day. And 355 asks him, "Well, why didn't you pack a bologna sandwich and hang out with the poor kid?" Yorick responds, "Oh, I don't know. Rules of the chalkboard jungle, I guess, but I never felt bad about it until I met you." 355, kind of confused, says, "Oh, sorry?" Yorick, he explains, he says, no, it's a good thing. I mean, I never knew the kind of person existed who would have sat next to that kid until you came along. Anyway, sleep tight, dude. And 355 replies, yeah, you too. So it's a very sweet thing that Yorick is saying about 355. He is saying that she is caring enough and selfless enough, and she would have sat by this lonely kid just so he wouldn't have been alone. The next morning, they are walking around, and you may notice they are walking around the Arc de Triomphe. Remember, this is where Beth said to meet Yorick in her dream. 355 says that she did a little early morning recon while Yorick was asleep, and she thinks she has a lead on Beth's location. Yorick, he wonders how, and 355 ignores the question, and she pulls out a gift for Yorick, the scarf that she has been knitting this whole series. She tells him, this is for you. Sorry I didn't have time to wrap it. And Yorick, shocked, says, hey, this is your scarf. You've been knitting this for almost 5 years. And 355 says, yeah, well, I messed up a lot, so I had to start over a bunch of times. And Yorick asks her, you're giving this to me? And 355 answers, I know how much you hate to shave every morning, and I figure this will be more of a practical way to hide your stubble than that smelly old gas mask. Yorick asks her, well, why give this to me now? And 355 answers, just as a thank you, Yorick, for, everything. She says this tearing up a little bit. Yorick, he looks down at the scarf and says, but I'm the one who should be thanking you. And then he looks back up, and 355 is gone. She has disappeared. She pulled the same disappearing trick Yorick did on her when she lost sight of him back at the Washington Monument. Yorick says, 355? 350? 350? He starts yelling. All of a sudden, though, he hears his name called back. It's his girlfriend, Beth DeVille. She says again, Yorick? Yorick replies, Beth? And Beth cries with joy, and Yorick, he doesn't believe it. He thinks he's dreaming. But Beth tells him, look at me. This isn't a dream. And the two of them kiss. Yorick holding the scarf that 355 gave him as a parting gift. 355 disappeared because she didn't want to be in the way of Yorick and Beth's relationship. Issue 57, Whys and Wherefores, Part 3. 355, with the successful mission accomplished, getting Yorick to where he needed to be, she decides to treat herself. So she goes to a local tailor shop, and she sees a dress she really likes, and she trades the woman her gun for the dress. We jump to Yorick and Beth DeVille. They are naked and having sex. After they finish, Beth says she does indeed want to marry Yorick, and she wants to hear all the stories about the last 5 years. They have a lot of catching up to do. Yorick, he's already told her some of the stories, like how Ampersand is the reason he's alive, and this Dr. M and his cloning research. He says, as far as answers though, it was all vaguely unsatisfying. Beth says, after everything we've been through, is there an explanation for the plague that would have been satisfactory? And Yorick answers, aliens? I would have also accepted witchcraft or anything involving nanobots. And Beth replies, in the end, it's not important what killed the men, only what the rest of us are going to do now that they're gone. Yorick says, that's bullshit, Beth. Past matters, it matters a lot. Beth says, okay then. Yorick, realizing he was maybe a little bit too forceful when he said that, he apologizes. Yorick explains, it's just, you're the genius anthropologist here, so I was kind of hoping you'd enlighten me about, why this all needed to happen, this plague. And Beth says, well, what if it's not why it happened, but if it even did? The women I spent time with in the Outback, they're convinced this has something to do with the dream time. They think our creative forefathers have fallen asleep, so all the men have just temporarily joined them in a stream of reality that runs parallel to our own. Yorick rightfully gives Beth a face that says, that's a ridiculous theory. Beth says, hey, I know how it sounds, but dreams are what told me that you were still alive, Yorick. Dreams are how I found you. Yorick replies, I guess I don't place as much stock in the unconscious mind. I mean, ever since I've been looking for you, I've been having these nightmares telling me that I shouldn't. Beth, concerned, says, oh. And Yorick explains, I mean, that's what I'm trying to tell you. My dreams were meaningless. Sometimes a cigar is just a mouthful of smoldering phallic symbol. Not everything has a hidden meaning. Now, if you remember over the course of the series, Yorick has had multiple dreams about Beth, and all of them kind of ended up badly, with Beth being killed and her body horribly decomposing into some sort of grotesque monster. Beth, she notices the scarf that 355 knitted for Yorick, and she asks him, "Oh, did your mom knit that for you?" And Yorick says, "No, a girl I know did, a woman." And Beth says, "Right." Yorick, "It's fine, you don't need to explain." And Yorick tells her, It's not like that." But Beth continues, "I'm not naive, Yorick. You are the most eligible bachelor in the history of mankind. I'm sure stuff happened out there, but I don't need to know about it. If I got on with ladies while we were apart, I'm sure you wouldn't want to hear every little detail." Yorick kind of excitedly asks, "You were with ladies?" Yorick tells her, "It doesn't matter. All that matters is that we're together. Everything else is just noise." Yorick begins to kiss Beth, and Beth starts crying, and Yorick asks her, "What's up?" And Beth replies, "You knew. You knew all along. That's what your dreams were about. You knew what I was trying to tell you on the phone that day that you proposed to me. You knew I was going to break up with you." Yorick, surprised, he did not know that, and now he feels like he just got punched in the gut emotionally. He says, "What?" And Beth says, "We were moving in different directions, Yorick. I had a whole world to explore, and you didn't." And Yorick says, "I can't breathe." Beth continues, "And you recognized it too. That's why you bought that ring, why you fought so hard to hang on to me. I wasn't sure about it myself until I got to Australia. I never wanted to hurt you, but I realized that Yorick, he can't believe it. All this way, all this time." Beth says, "No, things are different now. Why do you think I'm going to marry you?" And Yorick asks, "So you would have said no to the man, but yes to the last man?" Beth says, "It's not like that. You're not the same person you used to be. You've changed. You've always been an extraordinary human being, but I wasn't sure you were the right person for me to spend the rest of my life with. But now you're courageous and strong and responsible. You're the man I've been dreaming of, literally." Yorick asks, "Why would you bring up dumping me then? Just to get this guilt off your chest?" And Beth answers, "I thought the past was important to you." Yorick, he remembers a memory of them in the past, and he says, "Jesus, I just keep thinking about the summer after we graduated, playing Scrabble at your mom's house all day, watching TV all night. I couldn't believe someone was so interested in me, but that whole time, I was just a straitjacket you were trying to find your way out of." Yorick leaves. He says he needs to get some air. Beth begs Yorick, "Please don't leave. Yorick, I love you." And Yorick says, "I love you too, Beth. So fucking much." And he leaves. Beth is in shock about how that all went down. Hours pass. All of a sudden, Hero enters the apartment. Hero managed to track Beth's location down. They say hello to each other, and Hero asks if Yorick is here, and Beth says that he left hours ago. Beth from Cooksfield is also in the room. She was traveling with Hero. And she says that Siba and Natalia spotted the Israelis a few blocks from here. Hero introduces the two Beths to each other, as well as to Yorick's daughter, Beth Jr. Beth DeVille, seeing Yorick's daughter, is in shock, and she says, "What?" Issue 58, Whys and Wherefores, Part 4. By the way, pay attention to the cover of this issue. 355 is flashing the peace symbol. That's a little hint about something that will be revealed later. 355 is in a hotel room that she is staying at, wearing her new dress she got from the tailor shop. Yorick walks in and says, "Whoa, you look like a little ballerina when you pirouette in that thing." 355 asks him, "How did you find me?" And Yorick says, "I learned from the best." 355 asks him, "What are you doing here, Yorick? I thought you were supposed to be with Beth." And Yorick answers, "Yeah, so did I." We jump back over to Hero and the two Beths. They are talking about Yorick and their history, but Ampersand begins freaking out though because he senses something. And in walks Alter Saleon with some Israeli backup. She says that she won't hurt anyone as long as she is told where to find Yorick. Outside on the street, Siba the astronaut with her son Vlad and Natalia I've watched Alter and her soldiers surround their friends inside. Siba says they have to go and save their friends. Natalia, though, doesn't think that she can save them. Alter has too many people with her. Siba says that if Natalia is going to retreat, then give her her gun so she can at least try something. Natalia turns her gun onto Siba, though. Natalia says in broken English and with her Russian accent, "I make beg of you. No more of this bluffs. We both know you will not leave tiny Vladimir. Your mother, child need you. I must take you together to safety arms of Moscow." Siba asks, "I thought you were supposed to be some big brave war hero. What about that goddamn gold star you polish every night?" Natalia, now reverting back to Russian, says, "You know what this shiny piece of tin is, you fucking space cadet? It's the way stupid boys trick other stupid boys into dying for bullshit causes, and I'm done acting like one of them." Siba responds, "I told you I don't speak Russian." And Natalia responds, "You'll learn," with tears in her eyes. So Natalia really wants to bring Vladimir and Siba back to Russia and doesn't want to risk any of them getting injured by letting them fight Alter. Back to Yorick and 355. 355 asks him, "You fucked up with Beth already?" Yorick says it's not that simple. Beth and I both fucked up. I love her with all my heart, but we aren't meant for each other, not anymore. 355 tells Yorick, "You knew this was going to take work. You can't run away at the first sign of trouble." And Yorick says, "I'm not running away from anything, 355. I wandered the entire city about this last night. There's something I need to tell you." 355 interrupts him and says, "Don't. I love you too, but this is a mistake." And Yorick says, "Bah." 355 continues, "What are we gonna do? Sleep together? Second you climb off of me, you're gonna realize what you've done and go racing back to Beth." Yorick tells her that she's wrong. "First of all, I wouldn't be on top. I have poor upper body strength. Secondly, I don't want to sleep with you." 355 asks, "You don't?" And Yorick explains, "I mean, yes, I would love to eventually, maybe someday, do that to you." 355 says jokingly, "I can't believe you're not a virgin." And Yorick says, "Me neither, and I have Beth to thank for that. But it would be wrong for me to start anything with you until I'm sure things are settled with her." And 355 says, "Right, that's the right move." And 355 asks, "If you're this confused about Beth, the woman you spent half a decade pining for, how the hell can you be sure about me?" And Yorick explains, "Do you remember Colorado? My suicide intervention? Well, what I saw at the end there, what made me realize that I don't want to die no matter how miserable life gets? It was you, Agent 355. It was you." And 355 says, "Oh." And Yorick continues, "At the time, I didn't know what it meant. That's not true. I always knew, I just didn't want to know." And 355 says, "You lost me." And Yorick says, "I knew I wanted to keep living in any world that you were a part of, but that was hard to admit to myself, and not just because it ended with a preposition. For a million wrong reasons, I needed to believe that Beth was why I kept putting one foot in front of the other, but it wasn't who I was marching towards. It's who was marching next to me every step of the way." And 355 jokes, "Next to? You were always 10 paces behind, my black ass." And Yorick says, "I'm serious, 355. And 355 responds, "I am too, Rick, but what do we do now?" Jumping back to Alter Leon, she has Hero and the two Beths tied up. Eventually, one of Alter's soldiers comes in and tells her that they found the black woman, the culprit ring girl. They followed her from a dress shop to a hotel. Alter, hearing this, orders that one woman to stay here and guard them, and she is going to take the rest of her soldiers to check out that hotel immediately. Jumping back over to Yorick and 355. They decide that they want to try and be together. 355 says, "You can knock off the whole 355 thing, And Yorick says, "But you always said..." 355 cuts in and says, "That's over now. You're the one who told me I didn't have to be a number anymore, right?" And Yorick says, "So what am I supposed to call you?" 355 responds, "How about the name my parents gave me?" And Yorick says, "I thought that person died with your family." And 355 responds, "Yeah, so did I." Now we see Alter Leon's sniper rifle is pointing at them. 355, she starts leaning in, and she whispers her real name to Yorick, although us as the reader do not get to hear this name. Yorick, hearing it, says, "Well, that's a disappointment." 355 says back, "Psh, like it's any more ridiculous than your name." And Yorick replies, "I'm joking, dummy, it's perfect, really." All of a sudden, a small crack noise is heard, and Yorick says, "What was that?" And we see there is a bullet hole in the window, and we see that 355 has just been shot right in the middle of her head. She falls to the ground as Yorick runs over to her and holds her as she lies dying on the floor. Issue 59, Whys and Wherefores, Part 5. This issue opens with one soldier of Alter's left behind to guard Hero, the two Beths, and Beth Jr. That soldier is holding Beth Jr. in her arms, and she decides that she's gonna leave and take Beth Jr. with her. Beth from Cooksfield, who's the mother, begs her to not take her daughter. Hero tells the soldier that Alter would be pretty upset with you if she found out you abandoned your post, but the soldier replies, "Please, Alter has lost her mind. She would not care if I executed all three of you." As the soldier begins to head for the door, in walks Natalia and Siba. They must have been watching and seen Alter and the majority of her crew leave, so they decided to try and intervene and save them all. Natalia points her gun at Alter's soldier, and that soldier is forced to give up. We jump back over to Yorick. He is still mourning the loss of 355. He closes her eyes. Blood is still dripping on the floor below. All of a sudden, a gas canister is fired in through the window and begins dispensing gas. On the street below the hotel, the soldiers tell Alter that the entire hotel has been gassed, and anyone that is left alive in there should be fast asleep now. Just give it another 30 seconds to dissipate and we'll storm the building. Alter tells her soldiers, "You'll do no such thing. I want to go in alone." Alter says she needs her privacy. Alter heads into the hotel, walking through the gas, over to the room that Yorick and 355 are in. She is expecting Yorick to be asleep from all the gas, but instead, Yorick is wearing his gas mask that he always carries with him. And he extends 355's baton. He is ready to fight. Yorick, with the element of surprise, smacks Alter's gun away, and then smacks her in the face multiple times. Alter manages to punch Yorick in the gut and then kick him in the face and flip him onto a nearby table. Yorick, he then points a gun at Alter, and Alter is surprised. She did not expect that. Yorick now has the upper hand in their fight. And Yorick asks her, "You're the one who shot her, aren't you?" And Alter says, "She had to because 355 caused it." And Yorick asks, "Caused what?" And Alter replies, "The death of all the men?" Alter explains further. "It was her bosses in the Culper ring who started it, but your friend 355 did her best to cover up their dirty work. Why do you think she was following you around the planet? To make sure you didn't get too close to the truth." And Yorick says, "That isn't true. She and him found out about the cause of the plague together." But Alter answers, "Convenient. The documents I declassified in Tel Aviv suggest that the Culper Ring were looking for ways to deal with the emerging threat of China. So they released a chemical agent in Beijing that was supposed to prevent its women from conceiving male children, and thus crippling the Chinese economy within a generation. But something clearly went wrong." Alright, let's pause the story here for a bit, because this is very important what Alter just said. Alter revealed a new explanation for what caused the plague. Her theory is that the plague was caused by a failed secret attack on China by the United States, specifically orchestrated by the Culper Ring. See, America was worried about China's emerging economy, just like they are in real life, by the way. And thus, America created a chemical agent designed to prevent women from conceiving male children. This chemical agent was introduced into China to cripple their economy, which in the long term, in theory, would have caused some serious damage if all of a sudden no males could be born. However, the Americans must have messed something up, and the chemical agent instead accidentally killed males of all ages across the planet. So, did 355 really know about this attack? Maybe. Maybe not. 355 might not know everything the Culper Ring was doing. Do we believe Alter and what she is saying? She is a known liar, she lies all the time. So we'll probably never know 100% what the cause of the plague is. However, if we compare this theory with the other prominent theories of what caused the plague, whether it be Dr. Matsumori's theory that viable cloning made males unnecessary and thus Mother Nature destroyed them, or the more ridiculous theories like the cursed amulet of Helene, or the Aboriginals' Dreamtime theory that Beth talked about, or the various other theories, in the end, the plague being caused by a failed attack of the US on China does kind of make the most sense. To further confirm that this is more likely the definitive cause of the plague, Brian K. Vaughan was hired to write a movie adaptation for Y the Last Man about 10 years or so ago. And in that movie script, he wrote that this was the definitive cause of the plague. So, there you go. The plague was likely caused by the United States and their failed chemical attack on China. Although in the end, maybe it doesn't really matter what caused the plague. When the TV show adapts the book, maybe they will change what the cause is. But anyway, that is the most likely cause. Let's go back to the story now. Yorick tells Alter, "You lie for shit. What are you really after?" And Alter tells Yorick that she killed his mother. She says, "She betrayed me, so I shot her. There's an obituary in my pocket if you don't believe me. But you do, don't you? Believe that I murdered your mommy?" And Yorick asks her, "Why are you telling me this?" Alter just stares at him silently, and Yorick stares back at her. All of a sudden, Yorick has a revelation and says, "Oh my god." And Alter, now frustrated, says, "What? What are you waiting for? I spit on your mother's corpse. I put a bullet in that black brain of your tag-along whore." And Yorick says, "That's what this has been about this whole time. You've been trying to commit suicide too." And Alter says, "This isn't suicide, this is war. After everything I've been through, everything I sacrificed, I have a right to die in battle, and not at the hands of some girl. It has to be you, god damn it. Fight me. Why won't you act like what you are? Why?" So this is the answer to what the deal with Alter is. Ever since the death of her sister Rachel, she has had this death wish. That is why she joined the military and devoted her life to the military, and always took on the most dangerous postings. She may not have admitted it to herself, but the truth is she wanted to die in the throes of battle. She wanted assisted suicide. And following the plague, Alter's quest to find Yorick is only motivated solely by her desire to be killed by him, as she considers him as the sole remaining man, the only one worthy of doing so. So what does Yorick do instead? Yorick, he keeps his gun up to Alter's head, and he returns to the street with her in front of her subordinates. And Alter says, "What now, Mr. Brown? Have you come to give my troops one of your self-righteous lectures? No, you want to kill me in front of them, don't you? Then get on with it." Now remember, way back in the earlier volumes, Alter revealed that her name Alter is in fact only her nickname because two of her siblings before her died in childbirth, and her parents followed the superstition of never speaking her real name so that the angel of death would be unable to find her and take her life. But now that she believes Yorick is about to kill her, she screams, "My name is not Alter, it is Yedida, sister of Rachel, and I am finished running from the angel of death. Do you hear me?" Yorick, he does not want to give Alter what she wants though, for that would let her win. So instead, he knocks her out with the butt of his gun and leaves her with her troops, embarrassed and defeated. Yorick tells them, enough, as he walks away. We will not see Alter again after this, so her fate following these events remains unknown, but we can assume her soldiers no longer wanted to be led by her, as some of them already sensed that Alter was insane. So I think it's safe to assume Alter is pretty much done after this. We see Ampersand, Hero, Natalia, and Beth DeVille are wandering around looking for Yorick, and eventually they see him by a fountain. And Hero runs up to her brother and says, "You're alive! But the Israelis?" And Yorick says they're gone. And Hero asks, what about 355? And Yorick just looks sad and doesn't answer. And Hero replies, oh man. And Yorick, he just continues to sit by the fountain a little while longer, reflecting on the day's events. Issue 60. Alas. This is the final issue in the series. It is a special double-length issue, and I don't think you are all ready for the roller coaster ride of emotions you are about to experience. I also don't think that this issue will exactly be what you would have expected for the ending. We see Yorick's adult clone is greeted by a woman named Catherine. She says, holy shit, you're him, aren't you? She says her bosses at the Culper Sphere told me this was an important gig, but I had no idea it was you, sire? No, wait, sir. It's sir, right? I've never actually used that word before. And Yorick clone tells her, well, do me a favor and never use it again. Yorick clone asks her, so you've never met a clone before? And Catherine answers, pretty much everyone our age was cloned from somebody, right? And Yorick clone says that he was just joking. Women sometimes freak out because I'm usually the first guy they've ever seen in person, so I always say, whatever, sorry, humor isn't my strong suit. The two of them then board a small plane, and Catherine says that the president is waiting for him. So you might be a little confused right now about when this story is happening. Well, we see now the story is happening 60 years in the future, 60 years from where last issue left off, and we are in Paris, France, and we have this beautiful splash page of the city of Paris. We see a very old Beth Jr. Beth Jr. is the daughter of Beth from Cooksfield as well as Yorick. Beth is probably in her early 60s right now, and she is the president of France. Her assistant walks in and says Iran has developed a nuclear weapon. So even in a world full of women, nuclear weapons are still a problem. Beth Jr. says that they are going to need the Russians' help to defuse the situation. She has to talk to Vladimir over in Russia. So little Vlad is now the Tsar of Russia. Beth Jr.'s assistant says he's not exactly on speaking terms with us these days. But Beth Jr. says that she'll talk through back channels with the boy's mother, Siba. The assistant replies, but Siba Weber died years ago. And Beth Jr. says, bah, but remember that old Russian woman I introduced you to at Siba's funeral? She still has Vlad's ear, so we'll send a communique through her. And the assistant says, oh, Natalia was her name, right? Her English was excellent. This makes Beth Jr. laugh because Natalia's English has always been terrible the entire series before this. In walks Catherine, escorting the Yorick clone. Catherine shakes clone Yorick's hand, and she comments how much he looks like the real Yorick. It's like he's really him. Yorick's clone comments that he's just Yorick Brown the 17th, and Beth Jr. says that she knows the burden of carrying another's name. We see a painting behind her of her mom holding her. Yorick clone comments, my surrogate gave me one of your mom's books on secular humanism. It was really interesting. If you remember, Beth Jr.'s mom, Beth from Cooksfield, the one who lived in that church and studied theology, well, she became an atheist, and apparently a pretty prominent atheist if she wrote a book on secular humanism. But Beth Jr. explains that Beth Sr. ended up converting back to post-Vatican III Catholicism late in life. Atheism apparently loses its luster when the finish line of life approaches. Beth Jr. continues, anyway, this isn't about my mother, this is about my father, the first Yorick Brown. And Yorick clone asks, oh, I'm really sorry I never got to meet him. He died while I was still in quarantine, back when they weren't sure if we were affected by the residual. Beth Jr. cuts off Yorick clone and says, well, that's the thing, Yorick. My dad is still alive. And Yorick clone says, huh? And Beth Jr. says, he was a wonderful father, but his relationship with my mom was complicated. Even from an early age, I knew they were really only staying together for me. So we learned that Yorick ended up staying with Beth from Cooksfield for the sake of Beth Jr. Beth Jr. continues, no matter how well he tried to hide it, it was clear Dad was always in love with someone else. And Yorick clone asks, oh, the other Beth, right? Beth DeVille? And Beth Jr. says, That's what that shitty biopic would have you believe, but there was actually another woman referring to 355. So it's kind of funny. Yorick had a movie made of him in his life. Beth Jr. continues, I don't think he was ever the same after he lost her. Time only seemed to make the pain worse. On his most recent birthday, Dad tried to kill himself. With all the threats he's been receiving from the Daughters of the Revolution, we decided to spin his hospitalization as death by natural causes, but in truth, he's been secretly committed here ever since. And Yorick Clone asks, what do you mean committed here? And Beth Jr. says that Yorick, my dad was always a melancholy man. He doesn't have much longer, and I'd like for him to laugh just once more before he goes. And I have reason to believe that you're the man for the job. Trust me, just seeing you is going to remind him of happier times. All you have to do is be yourself. Yorick Clone is sent into a room, and there we see a hella old, original Yorick Brown still alive in his 80s. He is in a straitjacket in a chair with a dozen ampersand clones brushing his hair. Original Yorick asks his clone, did you know Elvis had a twin brother? Which is a callback to Yorick talking about this way back in Volume 1, Issue 1. Clone Yorick asks, who's Elvis? Original Yorick answers, he's a guy who can make women faint just by shaking his hips. Original Yorick says, so you're my ghost of Christmas past, huh? And Clone Yorick answers, actually it's July, and I'm not a ghost, I'm your genetic clone. Original Yorick says, I'm old, kid, not retarded. I suppose my overprotective baby girl told you I tried to off myself? Well, that's bullshit. It was just a joke because I was 85 and about to be 86th. Get it? Like the turn of phrase? Clone Yorick does not get the joke. Original Yorick asks the clone what his story is. Does he have a lady friend or whatever? Clone Yorick says he hasn't been a free man for that long, but he's trying. Like the old saying, you spend 9 months trying to get out of a woman and the rest of your life trying to get back in. Original Yorick says, do yourself a spectacular favor and stow that frat boy horse crap with a quickness. Girls aren't a game, not one that you can win. And that triggers a flashback with Original Yorick telling Clone Yorick about his past. So we jump back in time a bit, and we see Hero is in the Kalahari Desert in Africa. Yorick comes to visit her. Yorick is probably in his late 30s about this time, and we see Yorick is bald, which is a humorous callback to a few issues ago when Yorick asked 355 if she thought his hair was thinning, and Yorick said that he would just shave his head if that was going to happen, and 355 told him, please, white guys don't look good with a shaved head, but we see Yorick, he did it anyway. Hero asks Yorick, what happened to you? And Yorick answers, thanks, you look good too. Hero asks him, what is he doing here? And Yorick says that came to give Hero a present, 355's baton. He says he forgot to give it to her back at Mom's ceremony thing, and he figured that Hero would be less likely to shoot her eye out while she's out here doing her whole thing. And then Hero goes into a long, overly long explanation of what she's doing out here in the Kalahari Desert. She explains that she is out here to protect the last of the lionesses, and she goes on a whole rant about it, and Yorick comments, wow, you're even starting to sound like her, although we don't know who Yorick is referring to when he says that. And Hero says, oh sorry, she'll actually be back soon if you want to stick around. And Yorick answers, thanks, but I probably should hit the road. We got a lot to do, and I want to be back before my little one's 8th birthday party. All of a sudden, we hear someone call out Hero's name, and Hero tells Yorick, oh cool, here she comes. It'd be nice for you to at least say hi. Yorick, he disappears though. He did not want to say hi. And we see Beth DeVille, Yorick's ex-girlfriend, comes down the hill. And it is revealed that her and Hero are now together, and the two of them begin to kiss and make out. Yorick did not want to be around for any of that. So Yorick, he still has hard feelings about his relationship with Beth DeVille and how it all ended. Back to the current day with the original Yorick and clone Yorick. Original Yorick asks, so you moving out here or what? And clone Yorick says, to Paris? No. But I'm thinking of relocating to Canada. I'm interested in law. One of my brothers told me that the University of Ottawa might be open to enrolling a male student. So it's kind of interesting how rare males are in this world. The idea of enrolling a male student in law school is almost an absurd thing. Original Yorick says, well, don't forget your English in that bilingual wasteland. A whole country of women and one little boy still magically transforms elves into eels. It's like I told her when we met, French is for the chauvinist. Yorick is referring to the conversation he had when he first met Beth DeVille in the library back when he was in college back in Volume 6, Issue 36. Clone Yorick, he doesn't get it though. Original Yorick says, it doesn't really matter, but then he starts coughing. Clone Yorick, he opens a window for the original Yorick to get some fresh air. Original Yorick asks the clone if his brothers are like him, and Clone Yorick says, DNA-wise you mean? Nah, they finally started engineering new strains last year. Original Yorick, hearing the word new strains, it sparks a memory for him. We jump back in time a bit, and we see Yorick when he was middle-aged, wearing glasses. He is in a lab. He is calling out Allison Mann's name, and Rose says, "Hey, Four Eyes, thanks for coming." And Yorick replies, "Oh no, am I too late?" And Rose just begins to cry, and Yorick hugs her. Allison has just passed away. And Rose says that she tried to hold on for both of you, referring to Yorick and Ampersand. Rose explains, it took Allison ages, but she finally found out how to make a copy of you that Ampersand's brood would inoculate instead of annihilate. But I think we finally have a winner. So it seems like Allison has really made some progress in finally being able to clone Yorick without the male clone dying in the world. Yorick asks Rose, yeah, but how are you? And Rose answers, I'll find a way to soldier on. And even if I don't, someone else will carry her torch, no worries there. And we see, down below, a full room of Allison clones working away on their science cloning research. And Yorick jokes, Dr. Men. Instead of man, Dr. Men, plural. Rose comments, they're young but smart. The eldest clones already helped the Hartle twins with the livestock problems back in the United States. And Yorick says, they all talk with their hands, just like she did. It's kind of beautiful. Rose says, oh, that reminds me. Allison wanted you to see this. Rose gives Yorick a bag with some hair in it. And Yorick says, a lock of hair? Don't tell me she cured baldness on the way out, too. And Rose says, Yorick, she took it off of Agent 355. And Yorick, shocked, says, what? And Rose says, Allie always knew how much she meant to you. Ever since we started cloning females en masse, we have the wherewithal to bring back, for lack of a better phrase, any woman living or dead. Yorick quickly answers, no. Thank you, but no. I wouldn't want that. And Rose says, no offense, love, but it's not all about you. What if 355 wanted to? Yorick, he doesn't say anything, and he just stares, and then Rose says, right then, say no more. Back to original Yorick and clone Yorick. Original Yorick says, took him long enough. Clone Yorick says, start making other guys, you mean? Well, they had trouble with the Y chromosome, apparently. Original Yorick says, that's because cloning is crap. You can photocopy Dr. Man's brain as many times as you want, but without her asshole dad pushing those girls every step of the way, you'll never have her mind. Clone Yorick says, to be honest, right now, I'm really thankful for the whole nature-nurture divide. Original Yorick says, attaboy. Clone Yorick, looking at all the little ampersand clones around, says, whoa, these little guys are so well-behaved. Original Yorick says, tell me about it. 100 monkeys later and they still haven't gotten him right. Clone Yorick asks, sorry? Original Yorick says, yeah, me too. So this is kind of funny. Yorick has all these clones of ampersand, but they are all so well-behaved. Nothing like the real ampersand. This triggers another flashback. We see an old Yorick is walking with ampersand all bundled up in his arms. He says, don't worry, buddy. Everything's gonna be okay. Ampersand coughs a little bit. And Yorick says, I know it's hard, but it won't be much longer, ampersand. We're gonna visit an old friend. You always liked her, remember? We see ampersand. He looks old and sick, and he coughs. And Yorick asks, are you hungry? Okay, pal, here we go. Come on, dummy. You love grapes. Ampersand doesn't want to eat, though. And Yorick tells him, please eat. Ampersand, he does eat the grape eventually, and Yorick says, thanks. Remember Brazil? When those roller derby psychos had me tied up, and you started screaming at the top of your lungs as I tried to get out? You have been one piece of shit pet. Yorick says as he is crying, realizing that ampersand doesn't have much time left. Ampersand, he spits out the grape. He couldn't keep it down, and Yorick says, ah, fuck. Why the fuck did I do that? They said it wouldn't hurt, and I didn't want you to hurt anymore. They promised it would be quick. He says, holding ampersand, yeah, I know. Ampersand closes his eyes as Yorick holds him. Yorick collapses to the ground in front of a tree, and on that tree we see the words 355 and peace carved into it. This is sort of a makeshift grave for 355. And when we see that word peace carved into it, we learn that this is 355's real name that she whispered to Yorick moments before she ended up getting killed. So peace is 355's real name. Back to original and clone Yorick. Clone Yorick asks, so this is it? You know, growing old? All I have to look forward to is pain and misery and heartbreak? And original Yorick says, no, first comes boyhood. You get to play with soldiers and spacemen, cowboys and ninjas, pirates and robots. But before you know it, all that comes to an end. And then that is when the real adventure begins. Clone Yorick says, I have no idea what you're talking about. My life has been a total waste so far and I'm already an adult. Original Yorick asks, how old are you? And Clone Yorick says he's 22. Original Yorick laughs. Clone Yorick says, what? Original Yorick says, I turned your age a few weeks before the plague hit. Back then, my life was even more of a mess than it is now. I was jobless, behind on my rent, my girl was gone. Clone Yorick asks, are your monkeys okay? As the monkeys start moving around frantically. Original Yorick continues talking though and says, and my old man writes me this birthday note that says, a pair of deuces ain't much, but sometimes it can be a winning hand. The monkeys start climbing all over Clone Yorick, and Clone Yorick asks, are they supposed to be doing this? And Original Yorick says, you'll be fine. Just go out there and get your heart broken in, so it'll be ready when you really need it. Clone Yorick starts speaking more frantically and says, hey, call them off, would you? They're gonna claw my eye right out of my head. He finally pulls the monkeys off and notices the Original Yorick is gone. Original Yorick appears to have gone out the window, and Clone Yorick calls out, Yorick? Yorick? No! One last flashback. Back to after the plague, when ampersand, Yorick, Allison, and 355 were all together. There is an old crashed plane, and Yorick ran barefoot through some debris to get to the plane, and got some rusty nails in his foot, and Aunt Allison had to help remove them. Allison asks Yorick, why were you running through this debris field anyway? And Yorick says, because I thought there'd be airline peanuts, not a sea of rusty nails. 355 walks over to Yorick and asks if he is okay. And Yorick answers, no thanks to you. I thought you were supposed to be my guardian angel. Where the hell have you been? 355 holds up some peanuts and says, getting you these. And Yorick says, ah. And they share some airline peanuts. Yorick asks her, do you believe in heaven? And 355 says, Jesus, you're not gonna die. And Yorick replies, maybe, maybe not. I'm just curious. And 355 responds, like, do I think there's life after death? I hope not. Yorick says, but didn't you say all your family is dead? Wouldn't you want to see them again? And 355 responds, yeah, that'd be nice for a while, but then, nah. I hope this is the end of the line. And Yorick asks, why? And 355 responds, why not? Yorick, he changes the subject and says, okay, think of a card, but don't tell me what it is yet. 355 tells him, you're a strange kid. Yorick says, you got it? Got the card you thought of? It's the Queen of Hearts, right? And 355 replies, not even close, 6 of clubs. And Yorick responds, seriously? Damn, every woman I've ever met has said the Queen of Hearts. 355 tells him, "You may need to meet more women." Yorick laughs. Back to Clone Yorick, he is explaining to Beth Jr., her assistant, and Catherine that her dad, Yorick, got away. Catherine asks, "He jumped?" And Clone Yorick says, "No, he escaped." And we see an exterior shot of the fancy building they are in with the window open, and Yorick, ever the escape artist, even in his 80s, has escaped. We see the streets of Paris, 2 women guards. We see women on bicycles, a woman on a bus with her 2 clone baby daughters, women buying fresh vegetables at a stand on the street, an old woman sitting on a bench watching young women play soccer, a woman getting ready to cross the street. Wind is blowing papers into the air. That woman, she looks up, and we see Yorick's straitjacket blowing in the wind. And that is how the series ends. Alas. Alright, so that was the end of Y: The Last Man. I thought it was a very satisfying ending. We got answers to all the big mysteries we've had throughout the series. We know what the cause of the plague was. We know what 355's name is. We know what happens to Alter. We know what happens to all the various characters. Basically, every plot thread is taken care of now. So you gotta be a little bit satisfied by that. Now, did 355 have to die? I think a lot of people would have maybe been more satisfied if the story ended with 355 and Yorick going off into the sunset and living happily ever after. But I appreciate the more challenging ending, the more tough ending, the very sad but yet very beautiful ending that we do get in issue 60. I thought the time jump mechanic was very good. That way we can see where all of these characters wound up in the long term. All the way 60 years in the future, we see Beth Jr., Hero, Beth DeVille, Vlad, all of those characters. And we see how society, where they wound up. And we see clones out there in the world. And then, of course, we see Yorick. His life did not go exactly as he planned and thought it would. He ended up marrying Beth from Cooksfield so that he could be a father to Beth Jr., but maybe that wasn't the best decision for him. We see Yorick lose his hair, and that sucks for him. And we see the various struggles he's had in his life. And then we see Yorick as this 80-year-old, still up to the same kind of shenanigans, still a little bit silly, maybe a little bit more sad now, but in many ways he is still the same Yorick. Now, there was lots of deaths in this last issue that just hit us, so we get reminded about 355 multiple times. We see the death of Allison. That hits pretty hard. And when Rose asks Yorick if they should bring 355 back through cloning, and Yorick quickly says no. That was a very powerful moment. And then, of course, the death of Ampersand, the death that probably hits the hardest in this entire series. So as hard as some of those death scenes were, that is a fact of life. As you get older, people die and life goes on without you. As important of a guy that Yorick was, the only male in the world for so many years, the world is going on without him. Accentuated by those scenes of all the women in the streets of Paris near the end of the book, buying groceries on the street, playing soccer on the bus, etc. But as long as Yorick is still alive, because he's not dead yet, Yorick is going to have some fun. He's still up to his same escape artist shenanigans. He's in the straitjacket talking to his clone, and he gets out of it and jumps out the window. And then when they ask the Yorick clone, "Where's Yorick?" and he says, did he jump? And the Yorick clone says, no, he escaped. We see the straitjacket flying in the air at the end of this series. What a great image to just end this book on. So yeah, I thought this ending was very, very good. I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. I really think it deserves that perfect score. Thank you all for watching. I'm very curious to read some of your comments about what you felt of the ending. So please comment away. And I will be back in the future with Preacher.